Alright.
Go.
Welcome back, YouTube. We are here today with the lovely Miss Sharelle Grant, straight out of country Victoria, Australia. And today is leg day. I'm going to take you through our leg day with us. A couple of notes is Sharelle's actually been out recently, deloading the last couple of weeks with, what was it again? Hamstring tendinitis. We'll explore that a little bit later. She shouldn't actually be pushing a little bit the way she's going to today, because I wouldn't necessarily recommend that. But it's also the first proper leg day here at the new HQ, so we're just going to go apeshit and see what happens. So have fun.
Let's do the other hamstring, shall we?
The question I get a lot is, where should I be putting my feet on a leg press or a hack squat, any kind of machine, to get as much as I can out of my quads? Like, what's the best stance, foot position for your quad sweep, or for quads, or for glutes, or for hamstrings, or for whatever other muscle group it may be. So I've got a couple of different thoughts on this. You've probably heard in the past that the lower you put your feet, the more you're going to bias quads. The higher you put your feet, the more you're going to bias, say, glutes and adductors. And that's definitely true to an extent. But I tell people the most important thing is put your feet to whatever is most comfortable first, whatever allows you to take your muscles through the greatest range of motion. And the first thing you should be considering is not do I want quads, or not do I want glutes, or not do I want adductors, but more so, where does my structure fit on any given machine? What allows me the most range, and what allows me the most comfort and output from the muscles. And then there'll be within that a small range can go a little bit higher or a little bit lower too. So one thing you'll see on my pendulum squat versus Sharelle's pendulum squat is my feet tend to be a little bit lower on the sled, maybe 2 or 3 inches. And you might say, oh, because of that, Eugene, you're going to get a lot more quads. Maybe, but you also got to understand we have very, very different structures, very different levels of mobility in our body as well, which forces us to go to these different positions and to get more out of our muscles. So if Sharelle stands up for a sec, what you'll see different between she and I, so you may need to zoom back a little bit, I don't know, I'm just going to pretend that you are zoomed in really tight. But our ankle bones are roughly at the same point, our knees are roughly at the same point, but our hip bones, my hip bones around my iliac crest, that's a nice nerdy word for you guys, is around here, hers is way up here. So she's got longer femur or longer upper thigh. So that will mean when she squats in general, like body weight or barbell or machine, she'll have a harder time staying a little bit more upright than I will.
Yeah.
And if we go from the side, I want to assess ankle mobility, or how far this knee can come forwards over the toe without the heel lifting off. I've got a fair amount of ankle mobility here, of ankle range, and I don't know, I think she doesn't, I don't know. It's not bad, but there isn't as much as I have, and it's also, it could be the same as what I have. It might, honestly it isn't, but it still also doesn't take into consideration the length of her upper thigh. So those things together will mean that she'll, generally speaking, have to put her feet a little bit higher on the sled, or on the foot plate, on leg presses, or on hack squats, or pendulum squats, to be able to squat as low as possible without her hips, or her bum, or her back lifting off the bench. Because remember, all we really care about is get as much knee flexion as possible. Close the gap between hamstring and calf, because that will be as much of a stretch through the quads as possible. I don't care if your foot is high or your foot is low, because if you're not getting this range here, because that's the maximal stretch here through the quads. If I put my feet down lower, I may no longer be able to close that gap. Or I might do that, but I might lose overall stability through my knees. That's where I now start compromising the load I use and the intensity I use, at the expense of maybe feeling a bit more in my quads. So I'll show you guys what that might look like on the machine.
When I did that first rep and I had to reposition and go up, I felt like all the weight was tipping like that.
So common mistake people make is, so this is where I normally put my feet, around there-ish. In terms of the actual width and toe splay, it just comes down to what's comfortable. If I went parallel with my stance, I can only get to about here before my heels want to lift off. So I naturally want to turn out a bit more, which lets me come down a little bit lower. If I went down here, you could argue, oh, that's going to be more quads. But the second I get to about here, I run out of ankle mobility. I run out of room. And my body will start to collapse like this. And yeah, that's a big stretch in the quads, but I've lost all of that stability there. I'm not going to lift anywhere near as much, which means a lot less tension being placed through my quads, which means less stimulus. So technically, yes, the range of motion of the quads may be there, but the stability's been lost. So I want to go higher, and even though it may be more glute, more adductor, it's going to be a lot more quad because the load I can now shift on the plate, on the machine, and because I'm able to get the full range here at my knee.
Would you say that like people naturally take the stance that they're strongest in though? Like
They should.
Yeah.
So people will naturally, without coaching, they will typically go to what's comfortable for them. And the big issue arises is when somebody else comes in and says, that's incorrect, that's wrong, your feet should only be turned out 15 degrees or you're going to get cancer and your knee's going to explode. Everybody's got their own different structure, their own background, their own comfort, their own perception of safety. They will manipulate their body to whatever they feel is best. Now, if you see something that looks glaringly off, or maybe suboptimal, like somebody sort of squatting like this, maybe that's not ideal from an overall stability standpoint. So if it's comfortable for them, let them do it. But also use that weird kind of position as a clue of, why do they want to turn their feet out so much? Is it a structural thing, or is it a mobility thing that maybe could be addressed long term? And it could be both. It could be both. I think that's enough for that. What's your favourite kill people song?
you'd be disgusted with my music taste.
It's okay. Tell me what song makes you want to go punch strangers?
Just something with beat. Something poppy.
Give me something. Give me something to work off here.
Eminem.
Eminem.
Come on, his palms are sweaty.
You can leave now. Okay, alright, for Sharelle.
Eminem.
It's a pretty angry song.
Yeah. Warm-up sets for every exercise, or just for your A1?
I definitely do more warm-up sets on my first one or two exercises.
Yeah.
I do believe in doing at least one.
Yeah.
as a feeler.
Yeah.
Just so you're not going kind of thinking, holy shit, that's the new muscle I haven't felt before. Yeah. But we might do 1, maybe 2 here, and that's it, then we're going to go. Whereas pendulum, we did like 4 or 5, I think. Haven't we that?
Because it's sort of confusing, right? If you get a program and it says 4 sets of 8 to 10, do you always do an extra set? Because then if you looked at that volume, like if you're doing an extra set for every single exercise and you're not monitoring that intensity, like, I know it doesn't count, but it still counts to volume. Yeah,
that's exactly right. So if someone writes in your program 4 sets of 8 reps, I would assume that technically it means 4 work sets, like which are close-ish to failure of 8 reps.
Yeah.
But you're exactly right. The sets before that your warm-up sets, they technically don't count in terms of actual stimulating volume, but they definitely count in terms of neural volume and your body getting fatigued.
Yeah.
So that's why I think it's you want to try to keep the minimal amount of variables. So if you always do, if you always do 4 warm-up sets, keep doing that.
Yeah.
If you change it up and do 2, but you did 4 last week, don't be surprised if it feels different. Creates a different stress on your body. It's small, but it does make a difference. So I try to minimize the variable. Oh, that's right. That's a cabin weight. Fucking savage.
Go home and train legs.
It's a good seat, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's nice. It's got a little headrest for you as well.
Oh, okay. No, with your tail.
Oh, shit, I'm stuck here.
Shoes today though, no OH&S?
Yeah, safety first. Safety first.
This is really low, isn't it?
Yeah, so it puts your knees higher than your hips.
Shows those kicks.
Yeah, fashion.
Bang.
Hello.
Fashion.
Hello, ladies.
Hello, Zach.
Is the further back you are, like in this position, would it be better for your back because you're putting more?
It helps create a bit more stability, yeah. It's still possible to, but it's a lot harder for your body to want to compensate and cheat. Like you won't want to hike your hips as much because gravity's pulling you into that position. Cool. Easy. Doesn't even work.
Get me out.
Ah, lovely.
That was good. How many was that?
Oh, okay. far as you can go. Down. Nice. Yeah. Deep breath. Go. And again. Smooth. Down. Give it 2 more reps. You got this. Control it. In. Good. 1 more. Down. Good.
25?
Alright, exercise 2, we've gone on to the seated leg curl. As I mentioned, it was because we're looking at trying to improve stability. More than anything else, we're going to focus on the output of the target muscle, being the hamstrings. Now, a little bit of background. I think I might have mentioned it in the first part of the video, but Sharelle is recovering from hamstring tendinitis. So it's probably not a good idea to honestly be making her do a lot of just overkill on volume. And I would say, honestly, in terms of intelligence, what we did on the pendulum squat as exercise 1 was not the smartest thing for her at this current point in time. But it's okay, because it's for YouTube. And I mean, if it's for YouTube, everything's all good, everything's legit. But I would definitely have looked at scaling her volume a little bit more, not pushing her intensity as much. But we're definitely keeping that in mind now as we get into more direct hamstring work. So we're only doing 1 work set on the seated leg curls. We did that with higher reps. I don't normally like to go super high reps because I don't think it's absolutely necessary. But when you're dealing with things like injuries or coming out of an injury, or maybe even doing an intro week into a new program, I think it is a good idea to go slightly higher reps. One thing to practice the movement. So for Sharelle as well, she's done seated leg curls before, but this is on a new machine she's not necessarily used to. A new position where the hips are a lot lower than the knees, which I prefer and I think is a lot better from a seated leg curl perspective, but it's foreign, it's unorthodox to her and her positioning. So you want to make sure you're not pushing to that point where you're going to compensate a lot more, which would typically happen with heavier weights. So just 1 set there, taken close to or just slightly beyond a failure point. I'm more inclined to push movements like machines to or beyond failure points as opposed to free weight movements, just because of the inherent safety you have there and how there's a lot less to manage and you're less likely to lose technique. So we're moving on now to Romanian deadlifts. We're going to keep this well short of failure because we're assuming that we've pushed these seated leg curls close to, if not beyond, a failure point. So there's a lot of fatigue in the hamstrings already. So you don't need to really be pushing them to a failure point to really tax them a little bit more, because they're already coming in very much fatigued. Just going to do a couple of sets here, keep maybe 3 to 5 reps in reserve. And again, for Sharelle, this is a movement that might aggravate her hamstring. So if it does, we're going to substitute for something else, like a Nordic curl, or maybe even just a restricted range of motion, so she still gets the hip extension movement without aggravating that extreme stretch. Okay.
Yeah, I'll just stop there.
Yeah, cool, that's fine. I honestly go to that range anyway.
Yeah, that's not too bad.
Yeah.
Quads are still shaking.
But it's also part of the learning process of your body being comfortable with training those machines. So depending how acute the injury is, and also the person's pain we're willing to push themselves at a higher pain. So a 4 out of 10 might actually my aim to do that with some. Oh, that's not kind of hard. So when looking at injuries, we're looking at pain, and let's insert that disclaimer here where I'm not a doctor, I'm not a professional in that field, so speak to a health professional, and if you snap something and die, don't sue me, because I'm just a guy on YouTube, go after Sharelle instead, because she's kind of in the industry, she helps deliver babies and stuff like that, so that's appropriate, that's applicable.
I have something to lose.
Yeah, she has something to lose. Anyway, when we're dealing with injuries, pain, a very big part of the recovery process, in my opinion, is teaching your body that it's okay to explore these ranges of motion that may have given you discomfort. It's a very, very important part of the overall recovery process from a neurological standpoint. See, when you get something like tendonitis, or you feel something like pain or discomfort, a big part of it can definitely be, and most of the time is related to tissue damage, inflammation, some kind of overuse to the hamstring tendon or to whatever thing it might be in your body. But a big player as well in terms of discomfort and pain is also your brain trying to protect you from overdoing something, i.e. or overloading that specific tendon or structure or whatever it may be. So even long after your body's healed that area and all the inflammation is gone or all the degradation to the tissue is healed and recovered, your brain may still have that memory, in inverted commas, of danger by going into the ranges of motion. Because pain is an emergent property from the brain, it's a sensation. So your brain will, in a way, create pain just as a signal, not because there's any damage at all. Because it says, hey, last time you went to this position, you hurt yourself, you actually hurt yourself. So next time you get out of that position, I'm going to tell you that it's a little bit dangerous, a little bit unsafe, just to make sure you don't overdo it again. So it's a bit of a fine line there. Assuming that you spent a few weeks of deloading, recovering, optimizing your sleep, optimizing your nutrition, I think a very important part is, even with a little bit of discomfort, still go into the gym and still train within your limit. Like don't overdo it, which is how long is a piece of string for every single person. But I think it's important to still train somewhat, just to tell your body, hey, we're going here, under load, and it's okay, and you're not dying. And over time, your brain learns that, hey, we're not dying. So why am I giving you all these pain signals when there really isn't any danger anymore? It's assuming that, of course, you have taken the necessary time off, or you've been doing the right recovery work to allow whatever area it is that's been bashed up to heal. But the big mistake I see people make is just stopping training altogether, and then it becomes worse. We should do another set, shouldn't we?
We should.
Yeah, and then we'll do some quad stuff.
So Eugene, with like a leg extension and a 45-degree back extension, would you go higher reps reps, or what sort of rep range?
Sometimes. You don't have to. At the end of the workout, which is where we're kind of going to now, I like to keep either reps higher or rest periods a lot shorter. The assumption is you've done a lot of stimulation. Oh, hey, Jeanette.
That nearly took your eye out.
Well, stressful. Wow.
Great reflexes.
Oh, you see that?
Central nervous system is on.
It's kung fu. I'm clearly not fatigued enough yet to go do another set of hack squats or something. You can assume by this point that you're pretty damn toasted in the muscle and that you don't need to take as long a rest period anymore because most of your muscle fibers are stimulated, fatigued, burned out. So you could go high reps if you wanted to, or you just go very condensed reps because that will give you the stimulation that you need in those last few high threshold motor units. I usually prefer to go shorter rest periods because I don't like the cardio of doing higher reps in one set because I've got a very, very poor pain tolerance. I'm not a woman.
Oh, funny that.
Yeah.
So do you find, because these exercises are contracting the muscle in the shortest position, is that why you go for more higher reps?
That's
sort of
why
stuff?
the extension, yes. The hyperextension is actually more tensions placed on the mid-range. That's where the exercise is the hardest. For the glutes and the hamstrings. But generally speaking, if you're looking at condensing rest periods and doing more metabolic style work, you are better off doing that with exercise that emphasizes short position. So a lying leg curl or a hip thrust or a leg extension. Yeah. Other thing is towards the end of a session as well, because of the same principle where you can assume most of your muscle has received a lot of stimulation already, especially on those sets of pendulum squats, is you don't need to be going to that brink of destruction anymore. Because probably from the first couple of reps, even though you're not at a failure point, because of the pre-fatigue from the last work you've already done, your body's already going to be tapping into the high threshold motor units that you care about for the gains. So if you want to, for sure, go to failure. I mean, I'm just going to keep talking until Sharelle snaps something and dies.
That's it.
But you don't necessarily have to. And you could definitely argue that at this point, going and doing more sets to the failure point would start to compromise recovery a lot more in future workouts. So I do believe training to failure or close to failure is a very important piece of training that should be there at some point in a workout, but definitely not every single set, because there's only so much you can recover from, no matter how well optimized every single thing in your lifestyle may be. And I guess we're going to failure.
You're selling yourself short for some range.
Searcher style. All about the searcher here. Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, that's good.
Oh.
More places than that. How many reps is that?
That was like 17.
That's that.
Right, because you can even flex your biceps. That's good for the brain.
Jesus.
Yeah. How many was that?
12?
anyway, that is leg day today. I hope you guys enjoyed today's sessions. Any questions, comments, leave them below. Hope you guys learned something. Hope you guys enjoyed the workout. Don't forget to like this video, give it a thumbs up for me and for Sharelle. Subscribe to the channel if you're not already, and we'll see you guys next time.